Hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. Today's going to be an interesting podcast, I think, entitled Awakening the Sleeping Giant. Just the ideas, there's just so much tension going on in the world today. I mean, the chips are going to fall one way or the other. And it's going to be big, and I think it's going to be soon, and I think it's going to be intense, But at any rate, before we get to all of that, a little news on the gold Linga that we're having made. It's in progress. Panaji and Lakshmi, his wife, went down to Atlanta, talked with a goldsmith, and so that's all ready to go, and it's happening, and we're looking forward to getting that gold link, so that should be done soon. Well, I don't know how soon. How long will it take him to make it? I don't know. But evidently the man who's making it is himself a Shiva devotee, so that's good. And we'll get that going. You know what I've been doing lately is I found this station. I don't drive that much. I go to the grocery and the dentist. That's about it. But I found this radio station, and it's let's see, it's out of Robbinsville, I think it is, North Carolina, west of here in the mountains. And it's a lot of fun. Well, for one, they go back and forth. Sometimes they do farm stuff, so they're talking about the price of cows and the price of bushels of onions or whatever. I kind of enjoy that. And then and then it's mostly Baptist ministers talking and stuff. And I really enjoy that because it's like, well, like what one thing they said, Christ is God, and things like that. And just different things that kind of the typical stuff that you hear, And the reason I like it so much is because there's a depth to it all. I mean, what does that even mean? We're all God or any of that. And that's really my passion, is to take a deeper look at spirituality. I don't think it's something many people want to do. They're good with just on a feeling level. Oh yeah, okay, I can feel that. It makes sense. But it doesn't really make sense if you really take a look at it and analyze it. You need a pretty deep knowledge that I don't think we really had much access to prior to, modern physics, But nevertheless, to me, taking a deeper look at it gives it more meaning, gives it more significance. To me, things, they have to make sense. And I'm just glad we live in a time now where it can make sense. But at the same time, we live in a world now where people insist things do make sense. And so I think that's, like I've said in the past, a big reason why a lot of people are rejecting religion. But just with a little background, I mean, that's really a lot of what I teach in my classes, is to give a deeper understanding. Of course, Panaji says that 1 in a million people want knowledge to the depth that I offer it. And I don't even know that that's good or bad. I mean, it's not a judgment. But to me, and I think to a lot of people in the world today, that sort of making sense of it all is crucial. And if it doesn't make sense, they reject it. So it's the need of the time, really. And I think it's satisfying to everybody. Even if you don't need it to make sense, when it does make sense, it's a heck of a lot more, fulfilling, But to get back to the main theme of this podcast, the Cookie Monster. I don't know. Do you guys, Adrian and Scott are both here with me today. And I don't know, the Cookie Monster was either on the Muppets or
Sesame Street.
Sesame Street, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember, it's funny how things stick in your head, I remember there's this one thing where the Cookie Monster was singing, C is for cookie, that's good enough for me. C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. Cookie starts with C, and then he blah, 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 how he gobbled down cookies. And I started thinking this morning about why does that strike me so funny, and maybe I overanalyze everything, but it just, again, it just makes sense. There's so much of what's going on in the world and people's perspectives are not really thought out completely, or they don't even need to be. It's pure feeling, C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. Doesn't need to go any deeper than that, and I guess that my sense of humor, whatever, I think that it just strikes me funny. And maybe it's for that reason. Maybe it's there's in the previous podcast last week, we talked about defiance and other things. And I guess there's a certain defiant energy to it, Does that make sense? Am I making sense, Adrian Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's making me laugh.
Yeah, it's just funny. It's just funny, you know what I mean? And so it's not just that it's goofy, some cookie monster danced around about cookies, but it's just the line, C is for cookie. That's good enough. That's all you need to know, it strikes me funny. I don't know. But I guess that kind of dovetails into what we're going to be talking about today. Because, and again, Scotty, you were pointing out something to me a while ago about if you talk about anything political or the border or COVID vaccines or you name it, things are so charged right now that you can't even talk about it because people just knee-jerk quickly come to a conclusion of what side of the fence you're on. And if you're on their side of the fence from their perspective, then they just, oh yeah, and they're all enthusiastic. But if they perceive accurately or inaccurately that you're on the other side of the fence, that is it. You're done. Scotty? Did we lose Scotty? Go ahead.
Situation happened to me yesterday with my.
Yeah, we're losing Scotty. Are you there, Scotty?
We just wish everybody would get vaccinated so that every kid could go back to school. And I said, but Mom, there's no vaccine for kids. Like the little kids they have to be a certain age. And for everybody else, I mean, if you got your vaccine, you're protected. You don't have to worry. And she just like blew up. She thought I was like, it's just, everybody's got their choice. If somebody's dumb enough not to get to the vaccine,
Scotty, you're fading in and out. We're getting about half of what you're saying.
I was like, choosing a side and not listening to, and I'm like, Mom, no, I'm trying to talk through this with all of the information, so that you understand that everybody's got a perspective. It's not just yours. That's what I'm talking about, is having multiple views on this whole thing. And anyway, it went sideways quick, and she's like, I'm done with this call, and hung up.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I think once, just like I was saying, once somebody decides what side of the fence you're on, then that's it. End the conversation. Either it's yeah, and you're part of the pep rally, or you're just bad. And
well, I also found that if you even leave open, like if you're semi-neutral on either side, or if you're ambivalent, or if you are allowing that maybe there's something good about the other side of whichever person you're talking to, because everybody's got a very distinct delineated side right now. And if you even allow that there's maybe something good about some small thing good about the other side, you lose them. And then you get pigeonholed in one side or the other, the opposite side from them. Doesn't matter what side it is. You're pigeonholed as the opposite from them. And therefore you're sort of their enemy. You're no longer trusted. You're no longer perceived the same way. It's a huge shift that happens, and then to try to dig yourself out of that back to neutrality or to connect with the person again can be really hard.
Yeah. What did I hear? I heard a good quote recently, if you're on the defensive, you're losing. Once you're on the defensive, that's it. You're
but boy, you go from communion to defensive in a split second, right? Yeah. You're talking to somebody and you're just having a normal conversation, and you even come around the edges of something that they feel strongly about that may not be exactly the version of it they believe even. There's 10 different stances you could take on vaccines. So vaccines are a hot topic, but then there's these little subcategories within. And if you disagree on any subset, immediately you're on the defensive. It's really hard right now.
I think that's one of the things that is great about, and also I think, to my experience, unique about our podcasts is that we're trying to get deeper than taking a side. And I don't mean, oh yes, well, we're going to do the middle way or anything like that. I mean, I have my convictions about things. That the other recently in the podcast, I kind of went off on the idea that they're letting these guys who say, they feel like they're women, and so they're allowed to go into spas naked with naked young girls and naked women. And that's not okay with me. Okay, fine. I just took a side. But I try not to, I try, and it's not, again, because I want to be equanimitous. It's because if we get so supercharged with the side that we're on and white knuckle onto that side that we're on and can't let it go, where's the evolution of the conversation? Where's the evolution of our own life, of our own feeling, of our own thoughts? And like they say, in Chinese medicine, yin creates yang. And so the more we hang on to that, then the more they hang on to that. And all we do is create this big, huge war. And that seems to be what's going on. So how do we get past that? It seems pretty clear you're not going to get past it by arguing your viewpoint, just based on what Scott and Adrian both just said. And it's been my experience too. So how do you get past it? We've got to find a place within ourselves that's deeper than the surface, deeper than that conflict. And you know what? It's just not out there. It's not what people do. And if people, then they take that notion, that's a spiritual notion, equanimity or beyond relativity or whatever. But then they take it to it becomes just another thing to hang on to, white knuckle to. And that's not what I'm talking about either. I'm talking about the cosmic cushion, the unbounded self, the no thingness that the essence of existence is. It's a state of physiology that we're coming from. It's not a philosophy, you see? And that's why I like to say it's easy to portend wisdom. Oh, we can throw out the sound of one hand clapping or, equanimity or, all these different things. But really, it's how a person behaves once they get triggered. That's the real gauge of wisdom. If it's a hot subject, if it's something that they care about, and now in extreme situations, you're going to react. That's called being human, and that's normal, and that's natural, and that's even healthy. But it's become a way of life. It's become a way of functioning. We hang on to our surface perspectives with such adamance that there's no room for wisdom, real wisdom, you see? But we think we are wise because when everything's fine, we sit around with our friends and we talk about how wonderful we are, and if everyone in the world could just join hands and love each other, what a great world it would be. That is not it. you know. The roots of wisdom we're talking about. Wisdom on the surface is not wisdom, you see, unless it's really connected to the root of life, you know. Otherwise, you know, and this is what's going on today. It's like we're tumbleweed. Everybody's tumbleweed. They have no roots. And just the direction the wind blows them, who their friends are, what news channel they listen to, and they decide that this is the truth, and that's what they cling to. And they're just blown in the wind, you know. I was watching some stuff about the American flag, you know, and how, they were asking people what the flag symbolizes to them. And of course, what do you think? Some people were saying, it's, you know, symbolizes all the racism and all the wars and all the horrible things that America did. And of course, other people say, well, it's patriotism, it's our nation, it's our country, you know. And I don't think the world in general really even gets it, you know. I talk about the mandala, high end and low end of the mandala. Everything has a high end and low end of the mandala. That's the structure of the universe. You know, even the foundation, the structural foundation of existence that unfolds out of nothingness, it's called Rig Veda, 10 mandalas. And then, of course, they get into modern physics, and there's the N=8 supergravity theory and these different things. And what do? They start incorporating this notion of 10, not because they intended to align with the Vedics, but because that's the structure of existence, the structure of Veda. But the point is, it's a mandala. There's a high end and a low end. And it just seems vogue now to adhere to the low end of the mandala. And that includes, you know, oftentimes the people that are hanging on the high end of the mandala, because they look at the people hanging on to the low end of the mandala and they look at them in a polarizing way, you know.
Well, they each think they're hanging on to the high end of the mandala, right?
That's it. Yeah, you just said it. That's
right.
Exactly right, you know.
Right.
Yeah. We got to get past it. You know what? As a species, we've got to get past it. And that's why I'm calling this thing Awakening the Sleeping Giant, this podcast, because it's to the point where so many people have had it. The thing is getting so out of control. I don't care which side you're on. We're going to talk that way. But you look at the other side like they're completely out of their minds. Yeah, you know, and that's not going to last. It's going to bust. Something's going to burst. The chips are going to fall one direction or the other. And what I'm saying in a larger sense is that whatever direction they fall, by virtue of the time we're in, and I've talked about this from a Jyotish perspective, from numerological perspective, from, to me, just a common sense perspective, this is all going to sort itself out. The absurdity is not going to last. People have had it up to here with absurdity. Sooner or later, we're going to come back to our senses, our common senses. You know, one guy who was making a comment on the news I saw about the flag, and how did he say it? There is no unity now. We have no commonality. We're all too separated. That's on the surface. On the depth, we're all one. But you can rationalize that on the surface, think, oh yeah, we're all one, I get it. If everybody got it, you know, I mean, that's what Hitler did, by the way. Hitler was like, well, if everybody thought the way I thought, then we'd all be one. So here's the solution to unity in life. Kill everybody you don't feel one with. That's crazy, you know? So the very concept of unity goes so much deeper than the common notion of it. I mean, I hate to say it, but it just seems the common notion of it is if everybody thought the way that you thought, then the world would be unified. You know, the other thing too is where it really becomes acute, I think, is when it's not about people out there like, oh, what's an example? The border. whatever side of the border debate you're on. Oh, we should let people in. Borders are arbitrary. You know, these people are escaping suffering and yada, yada. Or what's the other argument? Argument in favor of borders. What's the argument in favor of borders, you guys? What do they say?
It's funny because I just had a conversation with a friend of mine. She worked for the FBI for a long time, and now she's working with like Homeland Security and with the military and all that. And she's like, people need to understand that we do need a certain amount of people coming in here because who's going to do the work? Like, who's going to work the fields? Who's going to do all these jobs that nobody else wants to do? And I said, well, you know, it's too bad we don't have somebody that can explain it, or a media or anybody that will talk about, you know, that side of it, instead of it's just like there's all these oppressed people that are coming in and whatever it is. It's just,
well, what's the argument?
What's
Scotty,
the real reason?
What's the argument against in favor of borders? Keeping out the drugs that are that are being channeled in, they say,
and human trafficking, terrorists
coming in, and people just not being vetted at all.
You know? Oh, and maintaining jobs. I'm trying to think of all the series of things you hear.
Then we get in the subject of Cuba. You know, they don't want to let anybody in from Cuba, is what I've seen on the news. But that they're keeping the border open from Mexico. And, you know, how do you reconcile those two things? And I don't know. But I heard one argument that said that, well, they feel like if the Cubans come in, they're going to be mostly Republican. And so because the Democrats are in power, they don't want that. But they feel like most of the people that come in from Mexico are going to vote Democratic, so they want that. I mean, that's a heck of a policy. And I don't know if it's true or not. That's the whole point of this.
And that was my thing to Well, that was my thing to her, is that, you know, we need to stop, you know, or we need to talk about how everything's being politicized, you know, and it's not what's actually going on, but it's about, okay, who's going to be in power. And I said, that's what I said to her. I was like, that's the problem, is that everybody is trying to gain the seat, you know, and so they'll push these narratives to whatever side that they want it to be, you know, because they know that there are people, or they'll sway, you know, it's all about getting people voted in, you know.
I mean, I've been citing that quote from time to time for how many decades: of the money, by the money, and for the money. Money, power, really same thing, you know. I mean, that's
the problem is there's a validity to both sides, but you know, wasn't Buddha say the middle way? Anything in extreme is not a good thing, and every single topic, it seems like right now is way out on the pendulum swing in one direction or the other.
Now here's an interesting
thing. So there seems
thing.
like there's no middle ground.
Here's an interesting thing I saw. South Africa, you know, they're having all those revolts and everything. And there was a guy, he was an economist, I think, from South Africa, supposedly very highly respected, well-credentialed and all. And he was saying that in South Africa, you know, post-apartheid and all that, they were kind of doing an experiment, he called it, where they were, you know, letting all the races together, and all the races, I don't know how he put it, merging or whatever. And he said what they're finding is that it's not working. It's creating more tension. It's kind of like, and I'm just saying the way he put it, I'm not saying I agree with him or not, but he was saying that there's a natural tendency for people to, you know, want to birds of a feather kind of an idea. And when you try to force it, it creates more tension. And he was attributing the riots in South Africa going on now and stuff largely to that. It was a social engineering, he used the phrase, that doesn't work. You know what he was saying. I thought that was interesting, you know, because ultimately, and I will say this, and I'm not, there is a natural law. There's a naturalness to the way of the world. And it's not for us to intellectually contrive in our ivory towers what that is, which is why I'm saying let's build the enlightened city. Let's have people meditate. Let's do what we can to have people get beyond their white knuckle attachment to their viewpoint and rest in that place of deeper wisdom and sight where real unity exists, where we are all really one. It's beyond the surface. It's beyond the confines of our own viewpoints that we live life identified with, you know. And you can't override, this is the point then, you can't override natural law. You can try for a time, you can resist, you can fight, you can rationalize your way around it, but ultimately it all comes back to natural law. And that's the sleeping giant that I think is going to awaken. The polarization, you know, it's so extreme. And we might say, well, wait a minute, World War II, there was incredible polarization, and Civil War, incredible polarization. All that's true. But here, it's everywhere you turn. I mean, in World War II, at least there was still patriotism on both sides, as an example. But across the board, any subject that comes up, there's huge polarization. The whole thing is like helter-skelter crazy, you know? That's not going to last. And I think we are really pushed it to its maximum. I think it's about to pop. And the sleeping giant, in other words, the people who have been passive on either side, I'm not even saying what side, but there's going to be a great awakening is what I'm trying to say. And it's all going to change. And it's going to change for the better. It's a rearrangement. It's a erase and start over kind of a thing. And, you know, if you talk to economists, I guess in DC, I have some people I know there, and they're saying that people are really concerned about the economy. And of course, from the one side, you know, they're going to be spending $6 trillion if they can pass their budgets and all. That's just from a purely mathematical perspective, that's radical, you know. And so people are saying that would be an inflationary spiral, kind of like what happened in Germany, what was it, 1929 or whenever. And then when money became worth less to the point where it became worthless. And so, you know, there's a certain group out there that are saying, get out of cash because it's going down the tubes. And then there's another thought, it could fall another way and we fall into a huge depression. And all of a sudden, with $1, you can, you know, buy quite a bit, you know. And then there's the other argument that says, you know what, it's all going to sort out. We're all going to come back to our senses, and I like that expression, coming back to our common sense, that which we're sensing that dwells deeper within us, as opposed to white knuckling to some surface perspective. We're going to come back to our senses, and out of that is going to emerge a world, an economy that is prosperous and affluent. And like I've said, it's going to be a huge transition. The transition from water to ice, there's a momentary turbulence there, which we're experiencing now. And boy, we are experiencing a turbulence now, big time, you know. I think the best we can do is to pay attention. I don't think it's a time to bury our heads in the sand and say, well, you know, I'm not interested in that. We have to pay attention to what's going on. And I think it's a lot of responsibility. But what does responsibility mean? You know, it's the ability to respond. And if we just pay attention, then we have the ability to respond responsibly, you see? And I think to do that, you have to listen to both sides without clinging to either. And then just feel into the depth of your own soul. What do you really believe? What do you really know from your heart of hearts? Not because you've been indoctrinated into a passionate perspective from one side or the other, but from the depth of your own soul. And that's not easy to do because it's so buried beneath identities, you see? Scott and Adrian, what else?
I think, people seem to, it's also really interesting because people get really hot topicked, really their buttons pushed or whatever on a certain side or topic if it affects their lives directly. And other than that, it's like they just don't even really, I don't know, think about it, acknowledge there's a problem, or, you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying?
It's
People,
definitely, yeah, like even the legal system, you hear about the O.J. Simpson thing, or that might be a good example, might be a bad example, again, depending on what side of the fence a person is standing. But something's not right, and yeah, is that, am I being responsive, Adrienne, to what you're saying?
I mean, yeah, definitely something's not right. I mean, it seems like the only things that are being heard or being given validity in the media or even in social circles are the extreme. But if something affects a person, maybe they're watching it on the news and they care about that one thing to the exclusion of all of the other things that are actually important. It's almost like all the eggs go in one basket. Does that make sense?
And it's not even it's when you hear it on the news, yeah, but it's when it comes into your own life. If you were on the jury, or if you were in court and you were the O.J. Simpson or what have you, and the futility and the absurdity of the system, it hits you right in the face personally. That's
right.
That's right. For a lot of people, it's got to be that personal. When all of a sudden your taxes are completely unfair, or your house is being taken away, or I don't know what. But that's when it's like, and you know what? Oftentimes by then it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like a lot of people are sitting silent on the sidelines and watching, and they're, really opinionated. They've taken a side on the things that affect their lives. But other than that, they're just sitting passively. But, everything is connected.
And it's easy to take a stand. But when that stand all of a sudden slaps you right across the face.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Then you might, it's sobering, and that's going to happen if we're not careful.
Well, and that's kind of what it is too, right? They've maybe there is a stand that somebody's taking, but somebody's got the extreme opposite. And so, every single, like I said, every single little topic, it's almost like, not even just our country, the world is fractured into these tiny ideological camps, and one is the extreme polar opposite of the other. And so literally just having a conversation, Yeah,
it can be like protect the homeless and stuff like that. But if somebody a homeless person starts camping out on your front porch and harassing your family, right away, you might take a different, take it different. Right. That's different,
That's different.
Yeah.
That's
or,
right.
This is a horrible example, but I think it does illustrate it. Somebody was adamantly anti-abortion, period. And I hated to even say it, but I said, well, what if, some terrible person, raped somebody that you love, and then that young child that got raped is now going to have a baby to this convict guy. It's not, and they were like, they should have an abortion, And I hate even bringing up the subject because, by and large, I'm not in favor of abortion, but I do think there's times, and there I'm bringing my opinion, and I'm sorry, but the point being that when it really is on your front porch, that's a lot of times your perspective shifts 180 degrees. That's different, like Scotty said.
Right. It becomes very personal. And then they're all in, And they may have a radically, opposing view to their original view. Does that make sense? So like using your example, there's no reason for an abortion ever unless it's their daughter. And then maybe it's different. And we're, school's about to start. So I'm getting emails starting to gush into my email, and it's, are we wearing masks? Are we not wearing masks?
Oh, I see.
Vaccines or no vaccines? Who goes to school? Who's online? And that's one topic. That's just, COVID. Well, I guess it's mixed, COVID and vaccines together. But there's 100 little details about that. And what side do you fall on?
And so many other topics.
Yeah, so many other topics.
All going on at the same time.
Right. And what in the world do these people who are in charge of your school district or your particular school, they're going to be violently wrong to somebody, no matter what they pick.
So are we, all of us. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that is the whole point, right? How do we just rest in more deeply and hold our views, whatever they are, in, like you said, internally with some level of equanimity, so that we can kind of function. You always say function in the moment in a way that's healthy for your life. It's kind of what you teach us, is try to hold your conditionings, that your really strong belief systems in such a way where wisdom can bubble through those, and maybe you can function in a way that's healthier for ourselves and our families and society.
We like to think that wisdom is a set of rules. If we follow those rules, then we're wise. But wisdom is a dynamic thing. It's alive. It's breathing. It's changing from moment to moment, depending on the circumstances. There's no cookie cutter wisdom, but that's what everybody wants, it seems. Give me wisdom in a cookbook I can follow, and then I'm wise. And even more so, I've got the cookbook, so I'm wise. And that's just not the way it works.
That's a really good point, because every moment in your life is different and calls for a different response. And, sometimes we might we've just categorized our lives to be so political. What I was about to say is, in one moment, you might do something that would be perceived as more liberal point of view. And then the very next moment, you might do something that's more a conservative point of view. I just talked about it as if everything in life is either conservative or liberal, or right wing or left wing.
I once repeated.
Makes no sense.
I once repeated.
So much more subtle.
That's right. I once repeated a quote that I heard, and it pushed buttons. But the quote was, "Truth is what's most life supporting for the moment." People don't want to think that way. To them,
but that's wisdom right there. That's wisdom. It's most life supporting in the moment, and it's probably not going to be what people are thinking it looks like. You know what I mean?
They're so right. There's a dynamism to the whole thing that's beyond fathomability with just the intellect. You're not going to find a list of it in the book. It changes from moment to moment, and that's it.
Yeah.
All right.
The problem is we have 7 billion propuntiums, little spaceships coming around with their windows.
That's right.
Exactly.
And all the windows, some have like one window.
We all have our own worldview, and it's an amalgam of all those different perspectives that we're feeling, even perhaps in the moment, or things we're white knuckling onto. That's right. And so how do you find that place of unity? You're certainly not going to find it on the surface. It's got to be from a place deeper inside,
Yeah.
That's why a lot of the Vedic literature is so great, because like even the Mahabharata, it speaks about the conflicts of life and the world and things like that. But nevertheless, the players involved many of them are these profoundly wise and insightful saints, you know.
I remember somebody asking you in some class, and this might also totally push people's buttons. I think I've mentioned it once before, but we were in class and somebody asked you, in an enlightened world, will there be Republicans and Democrats? You know, will there be two sides, or will everybody just come into this center space of oneness? And you said, oh yeah, no, there's going to be Republicans and there's going to be Democrats and there's going to be Christians and Jews and agnostics and atheists. And, you know, it's going to, all of that will be functioning from a deeper place of wisdom, but everyone will still have their own individual flavors of themselves.
Even the idea of renunciation, all that stuff is so misunderstood, you know. The ultimate renunciate. I'm not even going to say what that looks like, but it's not what most people think, you know. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. Maybe we'll get into it on these podcasts. Maybe we won't.
So I guess going back to what you teach is, do your very best not to get entangled in the extremes, right?
Stay out of the weeds.
Stay out of the weeds. You know, if you're a meditator, meditate.
Even better, get in the weeds, but don't lose yourself to them. Don't lose yourself.
Yeah.
Boats in the water.
Boats in the water. Water's not in the boat. That's good.
That's right.
From Maharshi, I think it was. Yeah. All right, everybody. I think that's good. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you all again next week.